not.
Alex, right here. You have two new starters at wide receiver, aside from Seth. How dependent is he to get open on the play of those other two guys? How much does his production depend on how good those other two guys play?
Yeah, I think it'll all kind of play itself out as it goes. A year ago we were walking into the same situation with Sed was a guy nobody knew about. Bayless was a guy nobody knew about. So I think it'll kind of play itself out, whether people can feel like they need to roll coverage that way or do something unique to take him away. Obviously, if it becomes a one-man show, that would be really hard offensively. But I think in this system, I think looking back at it over the years, it's kind of played itself out. We feel good with who's going to be opposite of him in terms of whether it's one guy or a group of guys. We feel like this is as deep as we've been in the slot going into camp at least. There's a bunch of guys that have to prove something in that room, I think in the same breath as they did a year ago, a bunch of guys that had to prove something in that room. But I think it'll be exciting to see kind of what happens. There's some really good young players, how fast they grow up, how fast they figure out what's really going on. What helped is having the three freshmen here in the spring. Now you're not teaching them how to play. They can actually continue to perfect their craft. But I think if he was a one-man show, it would be really, really hard. I'm pretty confident that it won't be that way.
Alex, can you talk about the tackle competition with those guys and obviously two very important positions?
Yeah, Vince, I think this is such a big question mark for us is who is it going to be, and is there a rotation there, or what's it really going to look like? In a list of questions we have going into camp, that would be right up there. I think it'll be exciting to see, moving Darnell over to right kind of I don't want to say solidifies it, but kind of solidifies that side of it, and you feel pretty good. And then letting Dane and Gerald and JJ figure out who the second guy is and who can play over at left. We went through spring, left there, feeling pretty good. I think just as important as who starts out there is who is the third and the fourth. Last year we got to the third and the fourth pretty quick. You hope you don't, but you got to have a third and fourth and really even fifth, and figuring out the depth there. I think whoever's going to be there on the left side hadn't played a whole lot of football. So, Dane's played the most. I think Dane gives us a veteran presence. I think Dane gives us some flexibility with being able to play inside. But JJ and Mintz are both going to be guys that obviously Mintz hadn't played any there for us, and JJ's played really limited snaps. So it'll be really good competition. We're gonna make it hard. We're gonna go, and I think from a mental standpoint, both those guys are ready to roll. I think it'll just be a matter of who can be the most consistent. We just got done talking through as a whole offense is who can string days together. That spot especially, who can string days together, and that's who we're going to roll with. And we've rotated there before. Gosh, you'd feel good leaving camp if you said, man, we got 4 at tackle that we can go play with. But it'll be a really interesting competition. It'll be graded daily. They'll both roll with the ones. I think Dane will get some with the ones, and hopefully by that second scrimmage, by practice 12, you feel like, all right, this is who it is. But I would feel a lot better if we left saying we have 7 or 8 than, man, that's our starting left tackle.
Ben and Patrick.
Alex, just where do you feel Jalen Hyatt and Jimmy Callaway are going into camp, and those 3 freshman receivers, just how excited are you to see what they can do this fall camp?
Yeah, I think that competition in the slot with Jalen and Jimmy and Squirrel, with Walker being able to get some in there as well. I think Walker's experience a year ago was priceless because he's a guy we feel like could be a swing guy for us. I'm excited to see all 3 of those guys. I think, Jalen had a really, really good spring. Jimmy finished spring really well. And Squirrel was so exciting to see this spring just because of what his mental makeup is, what his skill set is. That he's in so many ways, Squirrel in so many ways is mature beyond his years. But I've said this before, I think so much of what a season is who can handle it. Who can handle the camp is one thing. There's no school, there's no outside pressure, there's no anything going on. And then students get back to school. Cumberland looks a little bit different. There's academics, there's tutors, there's requirements, there's people pulling you, there's families in for games, and there starts to be a lot of distractions. And I think so much of playing college football right now is who can handle that part of it. Obviously there's more distractions than there ever has been. So who can handle the rigors of the day-to-day and be consistent through what they're doing? And I've said this about freshmen before. It's all pretty easy until you get going into a routine of what a season looks like. Squirrel for a freshman was as impressive handling school and football at the same time as I've seen. Probably because he just kind of stays to himself and doesn't let outside distractions affect who he is and what he does. Again, it's going to get harder and harder for him. But that competition in there, again, if we leave there with some depth, I would be beyond excited. That would be better than we were a year ago. Jalen Hyatt took monumental steps in the spring, just in terms of his growth as a player and as a young man within the program. Jimmy Callaway has been super inconsistent since our time here. So the challenge to him is, can you be the same guy every day and continue to grow? Because it's going to be really hard if not. And you asked about the three freshmen. Same deal. I think it'll be interesting to see how they attack this next 3 weeks, and then once school starts and we get into playing games, how they really can grow and continue to become assets in the team. To the team, I think, if you'd love to get those guys out there and get them into games early on special teams and let them see what it's like to be a college football player, and then see how they can help us offensively. It'd be great if all three of those guys panned out as freshmen and we had depth like that. Boy, we would be really good.
Alex, looking at your backfield without Lee, how do you feel about the offseason that Jabari and Jalen have had, and how much of you guys have been pushing Justin and Dylan to be ready to play?
Man, really hard. I think Jabari has changed his body in so many ways and is about as focused as I've seen him since we've been here. I think so different when you go into the year and you're being counted on. Is everybody else sweating like I am right now? Okay, good. So, see if we can change the exposure on the cameras in the back. I feel like I'm just got done with walkthrough at practice. But I think anytime you're the guy going into the year, just the way he's even walked into the facility, there's like a different look on him. There's a confidence about Jabari. I don't think he was super confident a year ago, and there's a confidence about him. He's changed his body. He's 210 plus pounds now. I joke with him that he now looks like an all-purpose back rather than a third down back. And the hope there is he can get and stay healthy throughout what is a pretty rigorous schedule. Jalen Wright has changed his body. Jalen Wright's, Jimmy, we talk about Jalen Hyatt a lot growing up and really changing who his best is. Like Jalen Wright is the same guy, man. Like he comes in now confident. Like it's been so awesome to see his growth. He had a tough time here his first year, coming in and enrolling early and all those things that hit him right in the face. He's a different young guy right now. He's like exuberant and really excited to be here and raises his hand to answer questions. Like he's a different kid. So that's been really, really exciting. Now, those two young guys, Justin and Dylan, they've both been told you're going to get as your work deserves, and we need both those guys. We're not very deep. We got to do a really good job managing those guys through camp and keeping them healthy. We're going to give Justin Williams and Dylan every opportunity to see if those guys can play early, and let them run behind the 1 and 2 O-line and see what they can do. The running part, not as concerned about as can you protect the quarterback. Those are the things for a young back that can cost you football games is not being able to protect. And so those guys have had a good summer. Jerry Mack's done a really good job getting those guys ready. Justin, we've seen. It'd be interesting to see what his growth looks like. That's a big question mark. We talked about like tackle. Big question mark to see what Justin has been able to do this summer, how that translates over into real football. And then Dylan, enrolled in June. So I'm excited to see Dylan because I think there's some really unique playmaking ability in space with him. And I think he can do a lot of things, at least off of high school film. And he's got real track speed, and he's a tough, smart young man. I'm really excited to see what Dylan can do. So we're going to need them all at some point. I'm aware of that. We're going to have to be really smart how we handle those guys in camp because we're not very deep. But our job's to find a way to make the depth go and win football games. So that's what we're going to do.
Brent and Madison.
Are you committed to Darnell being on the right side, or is that open and he could play left or right from the tackle position? And then secondly, as you go into year two, you got a bunch of guys who have played in your system, so I would imagine you want to grow there, but you're also having to talk about leading young players and newcomers. So what's the challenge of getting newcomers ready to play when you're maybe in your second year of growth of your offense? Is it different than a year ago asking a freshman to play in your system?
Yeah. Darnell Wright, Brent. Darnell Wright, in our mind right now, to keep him on the right, let him get comfortable, which is what he felt like was his natural home there 2 years ago, and letting those guys compete on the left side, I think will give those guys on the left side the best chance to compete rather than flip-flopping those guys. We want to see who can do it and then figure out the depth from there, because whoever ends up being third is going to have to be a swing guy. And so letting those guys compete at one spot would make it easier. Can Darnell flip over? I'm sure he could. But then moving those left guys back and forth, I don't think will give those guys the best opportunity to show us what they can do and give them an opportunity to be successful. Freshmen in their second year, I think at the skill spots, unique because all of them except for Dylan Sampson were here early. And so they were thrown right into the culture, thrown right into the football. So I think they've got a better chance this year. A young guy has a better chance this year to play than a year ago. A year ago, you were trying to find the 11 that could play in a game without all the other craziness that was going on. But the 11 that could play in a game, so you had to be mature, you had to have learned it fast enough, and you had to have been physically ready. Now, you got a year under your belt. Those guys came in where they didn't have to learn it totally from scratch. They were able to get extra attention this spring. I think it gives them a better chance to compete this fall. Again, I go back to we would love to play as many guys as we can. I think it would make us better because of the tempo we play at. Inherently, depth is something that can help you score points. At the same time, we're going to play the guys that are ready and the guys that we trust. I think if we've learned anything, it's that if you play guys that you trust, you're more willing to accept the end result of it than if you're playing guys just because you have to play a guy. I think that's our job as coaches, is to put the best 11 out there and obviously build depth through recruiting and development. And those young guys are now a year older. Those young guys are a year more developed. You hope you have more depth. And that's our job, to develop those guys. What helps this year more than anything, Brent, to be honest with you, is going in knowing who your quarterback is. Going in, and Jabari has a resume of film. Cedric has a resume of film. Those old linemen that are coming back have a year of film, and they have a resume built. You're more likely to be able to throw a Dylan Sampson in there at one running back, knowing that those reps for Jabari can be just as good mental reps as they can be actually physical reps. That's where you can go in and feel a little bit more comfortable. At the same time, the psyche of those guys understanding, being mature enough now to say, man, I'm not taking the one rep, rather than standing over there on the sideline and playing towel ball with my buddy. I now know what's going on and I'm locked in and watching and being able to steal reps mentally rather than physically having to go through them to allow young guys to get reps. I know that was really long-winded, but I guess yes would be the answer.
Madison in the back.
Coach, you talked about it some, just the competitiveness going on in the slot right now. Heupel was telling us, well, him and Hooker is QB1. Him and Milton really have a healthy competition going on every day as well. How have you seen their leadership really encourage and motivate some of these younger guys to compete every rep of every practice?
Yeah, I think just the way Hendon and Joe carry themselves, one, their competitive relationship with each other has been really fun to watch because they do truly like each other and encourage each other and are each other's biggest fans. I think the young guys and that slot position's really, really young, having somebody to look at and say, man, that's how you become a college football player. That is how you act. That is how you come to work. I think at every spot is that way, where you're looking for model examples for these young guys. But Hendon and Joe have done a really good job of taking ownership in it, not feeling like they're stepping on each other's toes. I give those two a lot of credit. That's more than I could do at 22 years old, and somebody's in front of me. I'd have a hard time being a good soldier there. But credit to those guys, credit to Joey Halsley and how he's managed that room, and Coach Hype's leadership and pushing that on those guys, what a quarterback is supposed to do, what he's supposed to look like, act like, what the day-to-day looks like. They're still young guys. They still screw things up. And but they have those guys leading has been really, really good. Cedric stepping up in a leadership role, which is way outside his comfort zone. That's not who he is, and us putting pressure on him to do so has been monumental there. Jalen Hyatt has developed into a leader in that group. Because of the way he's worked, he's earned the right to do that. So it's been really, really fun. But, give Jerome Carvin a lot of credit. Like, he's taken a ton of ownership for us. I think a year ago he was kind of looking around like, what the heck is going on? He's taken a bunch of ownership in the entire thing too. So, but their relationship is unique. Like I said, give those guys a lot of credit. I couldn't do that. I think most of us grown-ups got egos that couldn't handle it.
Last question really quickly, Jimmy.
Coach, in the NFL, the left tackle is valued more than the right tackle because they're protecting the blind side. In an up-tempo offense, is the left tackle any more important than the right tackle?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the tempo would really have to do with it. It is the blind side for the quarterback. We can control who's got help and who doesn't in terms of schematically. But I'm not sure if the tempo really has anything to do with the blind side. And I'm not being facetious in the answer. Just that is the blind side for a right-handed quarterback, but the scheme more so dictates it than the tempo in that world. You tried to stump me there at the end.